Now that we know how to find the magic number, let's actually do the entire completing the square process. So number one, always make sure that your equation is in standard form, okay? What we're gonna do is we're gonna separate the x's from the non-x's. In other words, one side of the equation has all your variables, the other side doesn't have anything at all. Then we're gonna do that magic number trick, half the middle squared. Once you have that magic number, I promise you it's gonna be a super duper easy factoring. You don't even have to set up your table. And then the rest of it is just Algebra 1 extracting roots, okay? So this is what I mean. Take a look at this first problem. The x's and the non-x's are separated. Then I'm gonna find the magic number. So it's gonna be x squared plus 6x. Take half of this guy, which is 3 squared, which is 9. So that's the magic number. Now again, this is algebra, which means if I want to balance an equation, if I add 9 to this side, I also have to add that magic number to both sides. So we're always adding our magic number. So we're actually done with these first two steps. Then it's going to be super duper easy factoring. So this guy, you don't even have to set up your table. You could if you want, but it's not necessary. If I square root this, it's x. If I square root this, it's 3. Because the middle sign is positive, this will always be positive. It always works that way. That's why this is such a magical number. Okay, then on the right-hand side, I have -5 plus 9, which is 4. So I'm done with my factoring of this side right here. Once I have this, then all I have to do is extract roots, which means I square root both sides to get rid of this square. Okay, square root both sides. So this is going to be x plus 3. If I square root this side, there's actually going to be two possibilities. The square root of 4 could have been positive or -2, okay? Now again, with any equation, I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So x is going to equal, I'm going to subtract 3, okay? So it's going to be -3 plus or minus 2. So my two answers are -3 plus 2, which is -1, and -3 minus 2, which is -5, okay? So that is how we complete the square. I'll go through a couple other examples. Let's take a look at this one. They're separated, so now I have to find the magic number. So half the middle, so half of 10 is 5 squared is 25. That's the magic number I'm going to add to both sides. Super duper easy factoring, so all I have to do is square root this, and then the sign that goes in the middle is copied down here. So there it is, without any boxes whatsoever. This side is just simple arithmetic. Then to get rid of this square, square root both sides. Remember, this could have been positive or negative. Square root of 4 is 2. Get x by itself, so I add 5 to both sides. So x equals positive 5 plus or minus 2. So my two answers are 5 plus 2, which is 7. 5 minus 2, which is 3. Okay. Let's take a look at this example here. So again, I've got to separate this 14 to the other side. So I have x squared minus 5x. Half of this guy is going to be 5 over 2. So I'll keep that on the side, right? That's 5 over 2. If I square that, that's going to be 25 over 4. Now, I know it's a fraction, and I know it's annoying, but it is what it is, okay? So this one, I promise you, is still going to be easy factoring. Okay, square root of x squared is x. Square root of 25 over 4 is 5 over 2. Since this middle sign is a minus, that's also a minus. Okay, so now the worst part about this is really just adding fractions together, which is an elementary school skill. So 14 is the same thing. If I want a common denominator of 4, it's the same thing as 56 over 4. So 56 over 4 plus 25 over 4 would give me 81 over 4. Once I have that, square root both sides. So I have x minus 5 halves equals square root of this. Remember, it's positive or negative. Square root of 81 is 9 over 2. So my answers are 5 halves. I'm going to add 5 halves to both sides, plus or minus 9 over 2. So my answers will be 5 halves plus 9 halves, which is 14 halves, which is 7. And then 5 halves minus 9 halves, which is -4 over 2, which is -2. So those would be my answers, okay? Let's take a look at this next one. Again, I don't like any number in front of this, so I'm actually going to divide everything by 3 first, just because I need this guy to be a 1x squared. That works typically well with completing the square. So if I did that, I have x squared minus 4 over 3x, Then I'm going to divide this one by 3 as well, which gives me 3. I left a little bit of space so that I could find my magic number. Okay. So again, if I want to cut this in half, remember it's half the middle squared. If I want to cut it in half, half of 4 is 2, so it's going to be 2 over 3. That's cutting in half. If I square it, that's going to be positive 4 over 9. So I'm adding 4 over 9 to both sides, my magic number. Okay, super duper easy factoring. Square root of x squared is x. Square root of this is going to be 2 over 3. This was a minus sign. So there we go. Again, worst part about this is really just adding these two fractions together. Hopefully you realize that if I get a common denominator of 9, this is nothing more than 27 over 9. So 27 over 9 plus 4 over 9 is 31 over 9. Okay. Now, if I square root both sides, something interesting is going to happen. I'm going to have x minus 2/3. That's easy. This thing just disappears. This one, if I square root it, there's nothing I could do for that radical 31. Okay, so it's going to be plus or minus radical 31. That's the best I can do. But the denominator, 9, I could simplify to a 3. Now I'm almost done. To get x by itself, I'm going to add 2/3 to both sides, right? We always do the opposite. So x equals 2/3 plus or minus radical 31 over 3. And this will be my answer, just because there's nothing I could do to help that radical 31 out. Okay. All right, at this point, why don't you guys take a look at these problems, these examples from your notes, and let's see what you can do with those. Okay. Pause this video and then unpause it when you have these completed. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at these examples here, see how you guys did. So for the first one, I'm going to cut this guy in half, which is 2 squared, which is positive 4. So there's my magic number. I added that magic number to both sides. This should be really easy factoring. Square root the first guy, square root the last guy. Sign in the middle is a minus. On the right-hand side is just arithmetic. So negative 3 plus 4 is 1. Once I have this, square root both sides. So I have x minus 2 equals, remember this side could have been a positive or negative 1. That's the square root of 1. Then to get x by itself, I add 2 to both sides. So x equals 2 plus or minus 1, which means my first answer is 2 plus 1, 3. My second answer, 2 minus 1, 1. Okay, let's take a look at example 2b. Same thing. Cut this guy in half and square it. So half of 8 is 4 squared. Hopefully your magic number was 16. Add that magic number to both sides. Super duper easy factoring. Square root of this, square root of this. This sign is a minus. On the right hand side, just simplify that. That is a positive 1. Once I have this, I could square root both sides. So I have x minus 4. This goes away. This is either plus or minus square root of 1 is 1. So to get x by itself, add 4 to both sides. I just like to put this in front. You could put it in the back, but it looks easier for me to do this. 4 plus 1, which is 5, is my first answer. 4 minus 1, which is 3, is my second answer. And that's it. Let's take a look at your next example, 2F. Again, first thing I want to do is I want to bump this 3 over. I want to kind of create that little space so that I could complete the square. Okay, so what would be this magic number here and here? Half of this guy is negative 1 squared is positive 1. Remember, the magic number is always an addition, which makes it even easier. Okay, so super duper easy factoring. Square root of this is x. Square root of this is 1. This is a minus sign, so this is a minus sign. Remember, this is always positive, so the sign that we're looking for in here is always dictated by this. Okay, don't forget the square sign. 3 plus 1 is 4. Almost done. Square root both sides. So I have x minus 1, no more square. Square root of 4 is 2, but it could have been positive or negative. Okay, so again, to get x by itself, do the opposite. Add 1 to both sides, so x equals 1 plus or minus 2. So my two answers are 1 plus 2. And my second answer is 1 minus 2, which is, and that's it. Let's take a look at example 2G. Now it's going to get a little bit trickier just by the nature of this particular number. Okay, so again, it's already separated, so all I have to do is find the magic number and add it to both sides. So the magic number is half of this squared. So half of this is going to be 3 over 2. I'm going to leave it as a fraction, not a decimal, because if I could square a number, I could square a fraction. Square that, so square the numerator, square the denominator, and that's it. So my magic number happens to be 9 over 4. Again, it's annoying because it's a fraction, but the factoring should be very easy. That's 3 over 2, same as what we just discovered. And this is a plus sign. That dictates this to be a plus sign, okay? And then this is the worst part here. How do I add 28 and 9/4? This one I have to get a common denominator of 4. So the numerator, if I added those two, multiply 28 with 4, that is what, 112 over 4 plus 9 over 4. So if I added those together, that gives me 121 over 4. Worst part is just this arithmetic with fractions, okay? Once I have that, square root both sides. So I have x plus 3 over 2, no more square. This could have been positive or negative. Square root of that is 11, square root of that is 2. Subtract 3 halves to isolate x, just like we did in chapter 1, really. So negative 3 halves plus or minus 11 halves. So my first answer is negative 3 halves plus 11 halves. So negative 3 plus 11 is 8 halves. So that's 4. My second answer is negative 3 halves minus 11 halves. So negative 3 minus 11 is negative 14 halves, which gives me negative 7. So my two answers are 4 and negative 7. Okay. All right, let's take a look at this last example. It's supposed to be the trickiest one. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide everything by 2. That's perfectly legal. If you do it to one side and you do it to the other, then you're good to go. So if I divide everything by 2, that's going to give me x squared plus 5 halves x equals negative 1. Okay. Now for the magic number, be a little bit careful. If I cut this guy in half, remember, cutting in half is just dividing by 2, which means introducing a 2 in the denominator. So half of 5 halves is 5. Just double the denominator, 5/4. Okay, so all I did was I cut in half. Now if I want to find the magic number, I have to square that. That should be easy. 25 over 16. Just square both the top and the bottom. There we go. So as nasty as this is, the factoring should be quite easy. That's 5 over 4. This is a plus sign, which means this is a plus sign. This always dictates this, okay? And then on this side, again, a common denominator, this is negative 16 over 16. So negative 16 over 16 plus 25 over 16 gives me 9 over 16. That's it. If you could survive this fraction, which is an elementary school skill, then you're good to go. Square root both sides, so I have x plus 5 over 4 equals plus or minus, that's 3 over 4. To get x by itself, subtract 5/4. So subtract 5/4 from both sides. And here are my two answers. Negative 5/4 plus 3/4, which gives me negative 2/4. So my first answer is, if I clean it up, reduce it, that's negative 1/2. And my second answer is negative 5/4 minus 3/4, which is negative 8/4. If I reduce that, clean it up, that's negative 2. Hopefully you guys got to these solutions.